Hello, everybody. I'm Jay Lazega. Welcome to L&J's Morning Break. Glad you guys can make it. We're excited to do this. Today's topic is continuing business in this time of the COVID epidemic. We'll touch on a few issues, budgeting, meetings. We'll touch on pools a little bit, although next week's session is specifically going to be on reopening amenities and dealing with the updated order from Governor Kemp. Hopefully everybody was able to get their hair and nail appointments for tomorrow. I know I'm set up, which is awesome. So today we have Rob Stein and Jonathan Benader, who are going to talk for 15 minutes. We're going to cover a lot of information quickly. We're excited to have you, and I am going to turn it over to Rob and Jonathan. Thanks.
Thank you, Jay. Thank you, Jay. Good morning, everybody, and I hope everybody is feeling well and doing well. I'm going to cover three topics in the next few minutes. First, we're going to talk about annual and other meetings. This is annual meeting season, at least for many communities. And for annual meetings, there are two major items of business that we all look for. One is elections, and the other is getting a budget passed if that's necessary for your communities. So where are we? Right now, we still are in the shelter-in-place order under Governor Kemp that'll at least go through the end of April. And for medically fragile and for some elderly and seniors, the governor's recommending and the public health state of emergency continues until May 13th. So we're in a very limited time. That being said, we're lawyers and we do look at what the governor has put out, and there is an exception where annual meetings could take place to do very limited business with social distancing and so forth, but we don't recommend that. That's not what the governor or the CDC or anyone else is really looking for. But we do have two options for you I want to discuss quickly. The first is postponing the meeting and doing all the same business we would have done at the meeting outside of a meeting. And the Georgia Nonprofit Corporate Code, which is the corporate law that governs all of the HOAs, POAs, all of our condos, has the ability to do any business that would be done at a meeting outside of a meeting by a written ballot. Now, I do have to say that unless your bylaws prohibit that, but I've never actually seen a set of bylaws that prohibit you from being able to do that. And with this written ballot, it's a specialized ballot allowing you to vote on elections, to take care of the budget and so forth. But it is a specialized ballot that requires 3 disclosures within it under state law. The other option we wanted to present to you is really a new option. It's a helpful provision that is also in the Georgia Nonprofit Corporate Code. It's a provision that refers to meetings which are held solely by remote communication. Now, this is a provision which hasn't really been looked to much in the past, and at least in our industry hasn't been used. But it is a provision which opens the door for remote meetings, for meetings by GoToMeeting, by Zoom, and those other kinds of sites that are available. And while this provision is not new to the code, as I said, we haven't really been using it, and it's not been tested in the courts for the things we want to do, but it is there. It is an availability. And communities are beginning to make use of it to have remote meetings. Now, in doing those remote meetings, we think that the voting itself, because many of the websites that are available don't do voting that well in coordination with having the meetings, is to do the voting by ballot. Continue to do that by sending out a ballot and having folks send it in, email it in, fax, scan it in, etc. And there are some electronic voting opportunities there as well, depending on other factors, which we'll cover in a future broadcast. You'll still need to send out notice for that meeting and treat that meeting just as you would any other meeting by getting appropriate notice out. The second item we wanted to cover was is board of directors meetings. Now, board of director meetings have always been able to take place by conference call or by video chat, any method by which all the board members can see and hear each other. And that's available under the Georgia Nonprofit Code, again, unless your bylaws say you can't, but again, never seen a set of bylaws that said you couldn't do that. If you've got open meeting requirements, then what you can do is have owners invited into that chat, but required muted under these various softwares that are available. So you can make that happen if it's a requirement under your bylaws. Lastly, let's turn to enforcement. You know, we think that some elements of enforcement of covenants can and should continue during the current executive order, which looks like it'll probably expire at the end of the month, while others should slow down and have slowed down, and others have to stop because, for example, the courts are closed at least until May 13th. Where you have, let's talk about 2 or 3 scenarios where you have currently outstanding violations, where notice has been sent out to an owner of fines, et cetera, and they've been given the opportunity for a hearing. They've taken up that opportunity for a hearing. You can continue forward with those hearings. Those could be done by the method we were just talking about. Those hearings are a board meeting hearing. We can have the board meetings proceed. We can invite those folks via Zoom. We can all participate in the board meeting. They can have their opportunity to be heard. If they have evidence, they can send that in advance. If they have witnesses, which a lot of our documents say they can present witnesses in their behalf, again, they can join the call. They can join the GoToMeeting or Zoom participation. New violations during the shelter-in-place order. I think the issue there is, can it be cured during the shelter-in-place? We think violation letters should continue, but they should take into account that there are some violations. If you're in a senior community and someone needs to paint their home, that's not going to happen right now. The letter should anticipate giving the person time beyond the end of the current public health state of emergency or the shelter-in-place, and we can work with you to refine that language for that. But give folks more time kind of built in, but keep the process moving forward by getting the correspondence out to them. Listen, most violations probably are business as usual, meaning that people can still bring in their garbage cans. If they've got the wrong curtains up, they can order what they need to do. If their lawn isn't being cut, they can mow their lawn. Most violations are probably business as usual. Last word on this, big picture, should we allow folks a little more time right now to get things done to cure their violations? Yes. We're in a national emergency. We're in a state emergency situation. Let's give folks a little bit more time, some leeway, and we're not concerned about the precedent that might create because we're in an unprecedented time right now. So if we give folks a little bit more time, we think that's okay. Thank you. Jonathan, let me turn it over to you.
Thanks, Rob. So I'm not able to see everybody, but I know people can see me, and I appreciate that you guys are taking a little bit of time out of your day to touch base. I hope the information that we give you is helpful. I wanted to talk to you today about updating the budget and borrowing money to make sure that your community is able to run smoothly. You could modify your budget to both increase or decrease the assessments. One reason why you may want to decrease the assessments is because you find out that you're not paying the vendors for services that they would normally be providing this time of the year, and you can reduce the assessments accordingly. Alternatively, it may make sense to raise the budget because you're concerned that there's going to be a higher rate of delinquencies, and you want to make sure that the people that are paying and that can pay pay more so that you can still meet all of your obligations. And the question that I get a lot is, well, how do we do that? More likely than not, the process to modify your budget is going to be exactly the same as the process to adopt the budget initially. And so check your governing documents. You may need to get membership approval, or the members may just have an opportunity to vote to disapprove the budget. But that should all be spelled out in your bylaws. Another thing you may want to look at is borrowing money. Again, the requirements to borrow money and whether or not you're able to do so is going to be in your bylaws or your declaration, and it could depend what sort of membership approval you need. If you're going to put up collateral for the loan, what are you going to use the loan proceeds for? So get with us. We can take a quick look and help you answer that question. Now, there are some federal programs that are available that we think community associations could possibly take advantage of if if the funds are there. And the program specifically that I'm talking about is the Economic Injury Disaster Loan Program under the SBA. Now, this program has always existed, but what's changed is now the entire country has been declared essentially a disaster area. And this EIDL loan applies to nonprofit corporations as well as more traditional small businesses. And one of the neat features about it is that it allows you to get up to $10,000 as an advance loan or an advance grant that's completely forgivable if certain conditions are met. Now, a couple of the downsides are that within 14 days of this program becoming available, and I think it was $60 billion that was put into it, all the funds dried up. And I know that the Senate just passed more money to go towards these programs, and the House is set to vote on it today. So there may be more money, but you're going to need to act on it fast if you want to, get that $10,000 forgivable grant. And you can reach out to us, and we can help you with that process. And then the last thing I wanted to touch on, because I know there are a couple of questions about this that came in the lead up to this webinar, is with Governor Kemp's most recent order to reopen some businesses, does that mean that we should, or are we required to reopen our amenities? And the short answer is this new order does not require that community associations reopen their amenities. Our opinion on whether or not you should keep your amenities closed has not changed. So Governor Kemp's order, it really only applies to certain businesses like gyms, fitness centers, massage parlors, estheticians, bowling alleys, and I think that's it, but I'll have to double check. And it doesn't require that even they open, it just says that they are allowed to open. And if they do open, they have to still meet minimum basic, they have to basically only do minimum basic operations, which is, doing those things that are necessary to keep the value of the business intact, like processing payroll and whatnot. And they still have to take measures to mitigate the spread of COVID-19, like checking employees to see if they're sick, telling them to stay home if they are sick. So it's not really applicable to community associations. Our opinion, as I said before, it remains the same, that you should keep, if you do open your amenities at this time, there's going to be exposure to liability. If you want to do it, there are ways to reduce that exposure to liability, but not completely eliminate it.
Awesome. Thank you, Jonathan and Rob. We're going to talk about the pool issue more in next week's session, basically the pool, the amenities opening. My take on it is a couple things to remember. One is Kemp's shelter home order expires the 30th, but he still has declared a state of emergency through May 13th. So the concept of opening amenities in a state of emergency in itself certainly opens the door to people having ways to try to claim liability if things go wrong. On top of that, everybody has said in the National Institute of Health, CDC, that the level of safety protocols we have to engage in when we are ready to open is significant. And most importantly, notwithstanding Kemp's order, CDC and National Institute of Health has said that the safest method of starting a phasing of reopening of businesses is in the local environment 14 days, at least 14 days after the peak of the curve. We've all heard about that, which in Georgia is supposed to be today, which would mean we're not into early May until we've actually even satisfied what the feds have said is the safety zone. So clearly doing anything contrary to that, while it may be legal, it's handing a bone to plaintiff lawyers who are ready to sue as soon as we open the doors. So we'll talk more about that next week. We hope you can join us. Rob and Jonathan, thank you. You guys did awesome. If you have questions, it'll be open for about another minute or two. You can shoot us questions. We'll reach out to you individually. We love you guys. We miss you. We hope you stay safe. We will see you soon. Thanks.